Hi,
Hi, welcome to another
film
Film
critters, processes.
Processes.
Yeah,
We're doing a little different thing today.
yeah, we're doing something a little different. We're doing a little bit of a double feature.
Double feature of films that technically I think came out last year,
Right.
but which are now funnier to talk about.
Yeah. Movies that I don't know, did they have any sort of theatrical release, either of these things? I think one of them didn't. Maybe.
I let me see if I can find it. I actually don't know if either of them did. I kind of feel like even Adam didn't have
Yeah.
a theatrical release, but let me look that up.
Yeah. We're getting to like a
'Cause
point in the future of just like, did this play in a theater? Was a theater involved in the making of this movie at all, even?
okay, so it came out in January at Sundance, and then it was released in August. Um, but it doesn't it doesn't say like if it was in theaters. It was just like it was released on August 14th.
Okay. Somewhere it played. It played on a screen on that day. Yeah, we're here to talk about Adam and Cuck, which is kind of on the sort of not really on the diametrically opposite vibe, but just like a very I don't know, very interesting vibes.
One is about being cucked by society, and the other is about being cucked by gender.
Yeah, you know?
And to follow it up, Cuck was released in select theaters and video on demand on October 4th. So both these
Okay.
were movies that like had a bunch of stuff about them and then just kind of like disappeared into the ether, except for like kind of recently people talking about it.
Sure, yeah. Huh. All right. And we there was that lovely like Twitter post that's now immortalized on the Wikipedia page for Cuck about how it made $0 at the box office, which is very, very funny, I guess. Uh, but yeah, did we want to jump into Cuck? Did we want to Cuck?
Yeah, let's say I'm looking at the poster for Cuck on the Wikipedia as well, and how it's like looks like a fucking Nicholas Refn film, but with the word Cuck down at the bottom of it, just in bold red.
Yeah, very, very hilarious and bizarre to see that film poster where it's just like this Joker thing, but it just says fucking cuck on there. They,
The Wikipedia article not only talks about the $0 box office thing, but it also talks about how they claim that it's because of like a weird quirk where the box office numbers weren't disclosed. But it talks about that twice in like two different sections of the Wikipedia.
yeah, what were your thoughts on cuck?
um, it's like it's not a good movie,
No.
and it's like not even like a funny bad movie.
Yeah.
It's more it was more fun to watch, air quotes, than I expected,
Sure.
but it didn't do anything either interesting or overtly hilarious with the premise of the
Yeah.
film.
Yeah.
And visually I kind of felt like and it wasn't even like, oh, I could see like if the script was better that this would be a better film, because like even like directorially and like visually there's like one shot that like, because I was watching it on Discord with some friends, where it's like a close-up of like the mop bucket at the bodega where he works, and then he like moves from the foreground to into the background, which is out of focus, and starts mopping. And I was just like, oh, you can tell they were like so stoked at how they set this shot up and like how cool it looks, and it adds nothing. there's like no emotional weight. It's just a shot that happens in the film, like in between two different scenes.
Yeah, I definitely got like film student vibes from Cuck, like majorly. It's just really like it just kind of moves from one thing to the next, and everything's like a punchline for the thing that came before it. And it's like, what if he hated cucks online, but he was a cuck?
What if he complained that women be fake, but then he fell in love with a porn star, the fakest kind of woman? Which, like, the payoff of that scene where he takes, like, he literally snatches her wig and gets, like, furious that she's wearing a wig is so funny, because the second that happened, I was like, how have you been, like, repeatedly sexually involved with this woman and not noticed that that was a wig?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's funny in air quotes, like, whatever. Like, oh, you're like another sort of layer of just like, oh, bitch, you were lying to me, you bitch. Oh, but I, I don't know. My one sort of positive about Cuck is that it really accurately portrays just how like soul draining the Southwest of the United States of America is.
Yeah, no, it was weird that it was Los Angeles specifically. It felt like it would have been like Glendale maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like, yeah, like Arizona. Like when they said that he was in Los Angeles, I was like, wait, what? I thought he was in like Arizona or like maybe the Central Valley-ish of California.
I fucking knew kids in Arizona who were the cuck, who were this cuck.
Yeah. Yeah, and like one shining example, like thing in the film is that the actors, like, embodiment of that kind of character, very good.
Yeah, absolutely.
He definitely, like, he has the mannerisms, like, down pat.
Mm-hmm. I thought that his like anger issues and shit like that were like really, really true to life. It's kind of this movie's really similar to the Joker in quite a few ways, namely like a starring performance that kind of outshines the very, very goofy writing material. Because you can tell he's really taking it seriously, and just all of his like outbursts are like, yeah, I mean, like, certainly not to that level of drama, but I've seen kids like lash out at their moms like that, you know. I've seen kids like punch their wall.
I've seen kids get like humiliated by their own behavior and like the way they storm out that like makes them like more humiliated looking, but to them it doesn't do that. Like it's the physical performance of his role is like incredible. And apparently, like, cause like we looked up photos of him, he put on like a lot of weight for the role, and he's like got like Chad face. Like outside of this movie. It's very funny actually.
I can kind of believe that. I kind of see it. Yeah, I would say like on the other side of the coin, it's like a very unsympathetic sort of, or I don't know, like when you're in the Southwest, you just kind of are, or like when you're experiencing those aspects of the Southwest, like it is that sort of nihilistic, or like it kind of affects you in that way. But I don't know, just kind of it just kind of was really boring and two-dimensional in the way that it was kind of unsympathetic to the conditions of this stuff, I guess.
Yeah, no, the problem it has is that it comes off like I described it as like it's you wouldn't come out of this film with any insight that you wouldn't get from reading BuzzFeed. It's they kind of like go down the checklist of things that like are common tropes of alt-right guys, especially ones who end up radicalized and do mass shootings.
Uh-huh.
But it doesn't really seem interested in like, okay, but what about these guys and their condition, like puts them on this path to be produced into this person.
Yeah.
Like we have like literally there's like the shot of him like opening his computer and he only has 4 tabs open at all times, and it's like military forum, YouTube, Reddit, and porn.
Right. Yeah.
There's no interest in like how does this guy go from like ranting about women to like jerking off to porn, outside of like, wow, isn't that ironic that he's like that? But it's like, okay, but like how does a person end up like that? Like what is that person's justifications to themselves for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Which like there's so much about like movies themselves that don't lend themselves well to depicting that process, because a lot of it happens on computer screens and on Reddit and all that shit. And so in this movie, we don't really get to like, we don't really necessarily see the process of like radicalization. We just see this like really childish like series of embarrassments which is definitely an aspect of that kind of like radicalization, but there's also this like there's a lot that's like missing, and there's just a lot of ways of like how this works as like a sort of Mother Goose tale of like egotism and like radicalization or whatever. Like just don't, like, at a certain point just don't make this kind of movie, because it's like not really educational. For one, it's not accurate, and if it were, like, it would be pretty fucking boring, and like even as it is, it's still pretty fucking boring because you just can't go like deep enough.
Yeah, no, and like he starts out radicalized. Like that's the other thing, is like this isn't a film of a person being radicalized in like the same way, say, Joker was.
Right.
He starts the film off radicalized. It just shows him getting more like desperate.
Yeah. Yeah, for
and it's
sure.
weird because then they also have his friend who like also seems to have like the same extremist ideas, but is like charismatic and successful.
Right.
And so like the thing you kind of walk away from it is that like the difference between like a radicalized like reactionary person and like a radicalized reactionary person is a mass shooting is that the latter is just a fucking loser. And that like and that there's nothing that can be done about that because like, you know, they just suck and it's their fault.
Which is like, you know, like it's not true, but it's also not helpful.
Yeah, because it doesn't propose any way to like intervene in that, and like I said, it doesn't propose any like interiority to that would make it something like Taxi Driver, for example. To use like one of the like classic examples, like there's an interiority to Travis Bickle's character to an extent that a person who might be a Travis Bickle could watch that film, identify him with him, but also see like, I see where he went wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas Cuck, it's like, don't go on a date with someone because after like 2 sentences that you've exchanged on Plenty of Fish, like I don't know what the take. Don't do cuck porn. I don't know what the takeaway is supposed to be here.
I did love the date scene of just like, yeah, this totally would happen. This like liberal arts like major would definitely just like meet up with a like Gomer Pyle looking motherfucker from like OK Cupid who is obsessed with the military and posting like racist screeds on his like dating profile,
and whose name was like Perfect Gentleman, which is like an Elliot Rodger reference. Like if you got a message from somebody whose like name has gentleman in it, and you were like that type of like liberal arts femme like person, you're not gonna like respond to his message.
Oh my god, you're screenshotting and clowning him on Tumblr. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, like that's like that whole time I was like, there's nothing about like they don't have any chemistry that would have led to this date even happening, and this person has more red flags to the other person that would have prevented this date from happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, if you're not going to be sort of anachronistic to real life situations, you could at least be like entertaining, and that scene was just kind of like weird and bizarre and off-putting and not very entertaining and didn't make a lot of sense, as did kind of the rest of the movie. Kind of the Joker effect, like same type of narrative, but also same like really bad flimsy writing and like kind of unbelievable situations.
It even actually recreated one of the same problems that we had with Joker, I remember talking about, which is like introducing this idea of like a kind of unhealthy or like fucked up like mother-son dynamic that they have. Mm-hmm. Like caretaker son, but like possibly like like past abuse, possible like mutual abuse. And then like it doesn't go anywhere with it. There's like that weird scene of him talking about how women are always trying to use you for like sex and money, like over shots of him bathing his mother, and like kind of implicitly like she's like making uncomfortable advances towards him.
Yeah.
And then like that just never comes up again. Like the idea that like there should be some further investigation to like how maybe having an unhealthy relationship with his mother is producing like, you know, unhealthy relationships with the rest of the people in his life.
Yeah. Yeah, like that would be way more. That's just the thread that's like left so open, especially just like by these movies that are made by people with film school brain, where it's just like, what if we just put in this fucked up thing as just like, you know, flavor? Let's just put it in as like spice, you know? When it's like,
Yeah.
that could be like the foundation of your narrative, but like but they kind of just don't go for that.
Same thing with like his dad turning out to have committed suicide when he was a baby. Like where it's
Yeah.
like that could have been like a pretty good like thing as to like why he idolizes his dad in like a really weird way. But again, it's like it's added in there for flavor. Like it's added in there for like, oh, and he's also fucked up because like his dad was in the military, but he killed himself while he was holding him as a baby.
Yeah, just ugh. Yeah, everything's just kind of window dressing for this like really kind of one track narrative about this character just kind of having spaghetti fall out of his pants over and over again. Which is, you know, only can be so interesting, honestly.
Yeah, there's actually like a couple things because like the people I watched with like Chloe and Farmer, if they're listening, hey,
Hey.
we talked a lot about like possible like things that we were like, oh, that could have been something. Because like another one that Chloe pointed out is the cuck joke of like he's doing cuck porn takes up so much runtime.
It fucking does.
And it's just the same joke like over and over again, which is that like he's this radical alt-right guy who talks about cucks and how everybody else is cucks, but he's doing cuck porn.
Yeah.
And that's it. And like that's it. It just keeps doing that
That's
like
the
again and
joke.
again. Like isn't it funny that he's like isn't that like so ironic? And I'm like, yeah, it's weird that like he doesn't seem to again notice the contradiction in his behavior, and there's no like film it's just showing this contradiction in behavior in a very like liberal the liberal like by your logic like
Yeah.
sort of like knee jerk like what a hypocrite he is, but there's no like okay but like what does that mean? Like what does that mean in this film other than just like he's a hypocrite or like he's unaware of the fact that he is a cuck?
Yeah. It's like I understand wanting to, or I don't even really understand it. I just like see the compulsion to just kind of make fun of this type of person. Again, like I kind of, I don't know, I'm a little bit of a broken record as far as like my treatment of like subjects in this type of narrative. But like I'm just not like I don't care about your like hate fic for like an entire genre of human being. Like it doesn't need to be like funny that, you know, someone is going against their own morals or whatever. Like I don't think it's funny. I think like yeah, like real life is complicated, and like, you know, going for this you know, really simplistic sort of shot through line uh isn't, I don't know, it's not, I don't see it as being very pragmatic, and I also it also is just very like basic, like sort of Facebook quid pro quo kind of shit. That being said, I did like the shot where he had cum all over his face.
Yeah, that was really funny.
The like fake John Carpenter looking nut.
I love how like quick it is too. They're just like come on his face, and like the guy at the top is just like okay, and just like immediately like a fucking squid just like shoots it out.
Okay, fifth, here you go.
We're being a broken record on this, but it says it is something where it's like you don't necessarily have to like make this subject air quotes empathetic. Like we're not saying like sympathy for Mr. Alt-Right guy. But again, it's like Travis Bickle, not a very sympathetic character, kind of sucks, but you're like interested in his story and you're interested in how he becomes the Travis Bickle that he becomes at the end of the film.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just not interested in the cuck.
Yeah.
Also, what was up with like his like black face paint, like like mass shooting outfit?
I don't like.
and it just like draws like more attention to him, and he like just kind of like is wandering LA shooting people. Nobody shoots back. That's already like, okay, wrong. He walks like 16 blocks before the cops catch him. Like, how long has he been wandering around, like, just shooting at random people in, like, military gear, which, like, immediately, if you're looking for a shooter, probably the guy in military gear.
Probably the guy with his face covered in camouflage. Well, they couldn't see him because he was camouflaged head to toe, so no one could see him.
It worked. Hey, Gulf War camo works great in Los Angeles.
Yeah, no, it does. He it's like the Invisible Man too. Like, you know, just a floating gun. I that's what I saw during those scenes. I don't know about you.
They CGI'd him in. You might have seen, like, it's kind of like how there's the two versions of Cats.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the one I saw, they CGI'd him back in to test audiences.
Yeah, it's a very delicate balance that the costume department has to run.
Last point on the like things that I think this film dropped the ball on. His like his rise in like YouTubedom makes like no sense.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's basically like a fucking like iCarly scene. It's just like the subscribers. Oh, you have 400 billion subscribers now, and your videos have 700 trillion views each. How do you feel, sir?
He gets $3 from YouTube for the. But
that's
the thing that I thought was like a the lost opportunity / like revelation that like these guys definitely did not do as much research as they claim, is like the scene when he goes down with like the kind of like big name in his world, and the guy just has like a like lonely dinner with him at a diner, and like basically encourages him to do like mass shootings. Those kind of guys are all grifters.
Oh, yeah.
Like, none of them, like, one, after a big rally, they're partying with their friends. Two, after they're definitely not going to get caught, like, telling an individual, you should do, like, mass terrorism. Because that threatens the grift.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And that was, like, another thing where it's, like, that's a lost opportunity, is, like, have this guy get really, like, into this world, and then like he meets like this top figure that he idolizes in that sort of like Joker way, and then like the same thing with Joker where like he ends up being let down and he finds out like, oh, this guy like doesn't really believe what he's telling you to believe,
right?
And like even have the scene play off where like he assumes that like the cuck is like him, and then when it comes out that the cuck is like doing cuck porn, he's like, oh, I'm going to use this as a chance to like sink this guy's reputation because this guy is a true believer and knows that I'm a grifter and I need to like cover my tracks.
Yeah, that would, I mean, like if the movie leaned on that a little bit more, that would have been way more interesting. Cause that's true. Like a lot of these guys are just PR dudes who are in debt.
Yeah, like a lot of them whip this stuff up for money, and the people who carry out the violence of it are like the true believers who are taken in by that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. That was not a very like I don't know, that was not a very interesting plot line for me. I kind of zoned out for that whole like him like vlogging about the libtards or whatever, and then like hanging out with his hero. Like
the film picks like too many threads and ideas that it has, and it doesn't do anything with any of them.
Yeah, not recommended. Yeah.
What are you glad you spent your what was this, like a $10 rental? $4.
$4 rental, yeah. Well, I guess I would have rather spent my money on what can $4 get you? What can you get for $4? If there's like, okay, I would round it up and get find an actor on Fiverr to read out some Cuck fanfic. That's what I would have rather spent it on.
And what are you glad you didn't spend it on?
What am I glad I didn't spend it on? I'm glad I didn't spend it on is that new app like Quibi? Quibi, is that what it's called? Quibi? Does that have
Quibi.
does that have like a membership or something? I guess I'm glad I didn't spend it on that.
It's gotta have some scam. Some scam bucks.
Some sort of fucking scam. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't spend it on that. What would you rather have spent your money on?
I would have rather have spent my $4 on 2 Monster Energy drinks. Monster Energy Ultra Zeros. So I could live my 30-year-old boomer Wojak lifestyle.
Okay.
Just double fisting them. And playing Death Stranding, which also has Monster Energy in it.
Oh, hell fucking yeah.
Do you get that 2 for $4 deal at Safeway? I think that's what I would have rather have spent my money on.
Yeah, that's a great deal. What are you glad you didn't spend your $4 on?
I'm glad you asked, because our next movie, Adam, I did not spend $4 on because it is free on Hulu, so I watched it there.
That's true. I also did that.
So we don't even have to do the money thing for that one. But if I did not have Hulu, it was $4 to rent. So I'm very glad that I have Hulu. Through it's bundled in with some other bullshit I have.
Thank God. Thank fucking God. Well, I guess let's springboard our way across
Let's go
the
from
pond.
One end of the gender spectrum, Cucks, to the other end of the gender spectrum, soy boys.
Those are the same end, Jay.
I would argue that soy boy is like Cuck of center.
Okay, that's fair.
Like
so,
Cuck is
centrist.
the far end of the pole, and soy boy is like would be like closer towards the center on the Cuck to like center line. And then on the other end would be based, I guess.
Based chads. I don't know, whatever the kids are saying.
If you know what the kids are saying, leave a comment down below.
Let us know. We have no idea whatsoever. So yeah, Adam.
So
I mean, I had
maybe
fun.
Should we start with the controversy behind Adam?
So what is the controversy behind Adam? I'm interested in hearing.
Oh, so there's like basically a couple. So there's the original book by Ariel Schrag, the former L Word writer, which is already strike one. Strike two is that I guess she wrote the book based on like when they would go out to like gay bars and stuff to do research for the L Word, the one cis dude on staff would pretend to be a trans dude. Not to pick up chicks, but just so like that way like it wouldn't be weird that he was in those spaces, which actually makes it way weirder that he's in those spaces. If you're a cis guy strange. And you're going with like all your dyke friends, is there like a fag hag for lesbians? Dyke Mike? Let's go with Dyke Mike. If you're the Dyke Mike, just go. Like it's fine. Like if you roll up to a lesbian bar like 5 like dykes deep, they're just gonna assume you're chill.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Like you don't have to pretend.
So already that's weird. So she was like, "Oh, what if I did like a story about like somebody who does that, but like to hook up with lesbians?" And then she was like, "Oh, that would be kind of like sus. I'll make him a teenage boy trying to hook up with lesbians who are like college age because like in the book he's 17." Because that will, like, in her mind, like, the mathematics of that is that like, that corrects the power dynamic, but it actually makes it actually makes things, like, way worse.
Yeah, no.
It introduces an entirely new problem to the thing on top of the original problem.
Yeah.
So she wrote a book about a teen boy who visits his sister and gets into the world of queers in New York and ends up pretending to be a trans man because he has a crush on a lesbian girl.
So to be clear, he's a teen cis boy.
Yeah, he is a teen cis boy named Adam. Yeah, so that book surprisingly enough, not well received.
Shocking.
And it was so not well received that they decided to adapt it into a movie.
As a big fuck you to all gay people.
And they gave the directorial work to a trans man who swore up and down that he was gonna like subvert the text, or like I don't know what the differences between the movie and the book are. It doesn't seem like he did a lot to subvert it. But one thing he did subvert was people's ability to consent for the movie that they're in. So a bunch of the extras in the camp trans scene didn't know that this movie was Adam.
Cool.
It turns out that they basically lied to a bunch of the extras for those scenes to get actual trans people to be in the camp trans scenes, and told them that it was just a movie about camp trans.
I mean, I'd heard a little bit about that. That is pretty fucked up. And I feel very, very, very sorry for all the trans actors in that scene. That was... bleh.
Because, like, when the movie was announced, you know, it's like, it is one thing to, like, cast trans actors in your movie as a sort of, like, crossing our fingers, like, we're safe now. But it's another to, like, do that so that you can point to, like, a wide cast of trans people and be like, well, look, they're in this movie, without telling them that they're essentially signing on to be your body in front of your movie.
Yeah, like, that's just a major, like, bizarre oversight. Like, that, having worked in very limited capacities on sets of very small capacity, like, that's just, like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Because, like, a bunch of those actors came out about it because they were, like, you know, obviously the film was announced and there was, like, backlash against it. And so, like, they had to come out and be like, hey, like, we didn't sign on to this movie, like, knowing that it was this movie. Because, like, we wouldn't have. And, like,
because who would have?
And, like, I would, like, make an argument that, you know, like, trans actors and actresses, like, have got to eat. Like, they shouldn't be the ones being put on that, like, on the floor for that kind of stuff in the first place, because they are ultimately not the ones who decided to dump a bunch of money into this movie. Mm-hmm. But they also should not have been put in the position of not knowing that they were going to be deployed as that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like, I think they shouldn't have had to defend themselves in that way, in the sense that, like, again, they got to eat, but also they shouldn't have had to defend themselves in that way, and that they shouldn't have been tricked into signing on to a movie that they might otherwise not have been wanted to be a part of.
Yeah, that's super fucked up. But I mean, like, it's, you know, it sounds pretty par for the course. I mean, like, we're talking about a property that is kind of a offshoot of the L Word in large part, which I will, like, you know, which the L Word had, like, Max, who is a very bad depiction of, like, a trans male character, or I don't know, not necessarily a bad depiction, because that makes, like, that's pretty, that kind of makes his that kind of minimizes him a little bit, but it is, like, from a very particular perspective about transness. And then I will also say it is super ballsy to, like, have this property that's, like, by one of the L Word writers, and to just have a bunch of characters watching the L Word in this movie.
And specifically praising, like doing a joke about how, like, Max was, like, not a great trans mass character at times, but, like, having the criticisms be very, like, shallow in a way that's like, oh, but we still love him. He's still a great character. It's just like, haha, facial hair doesn't grow that fast. And not like, no, like, trans men have had, like, some, like, kind of, like, more harsher critiques of the way in which Max is kind of fetishized within the show.
Yeah. Like, there's actual, like, no holds barred critiques out there. I mean, like, that, I will say, like, the things that they said while they were watching the L Word were all very realistic, and things that I feel like, because while I was watching the L Word, as one does, like you do, Max kind of is like the kicked puppy of the show. Like you do want the best for him, but the showrunners don't.
Yeah,
Um,
no, no. I adore Max as like a character, but I hate the confines of the character because yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Like Max is sort of like the football like that's thrown around for dramatic effect in the show, but he himself as a character is just like a sweet like poor Southern boy.
yeah, absolutely. Like he's this perfect type of man of just like he's very like forgiving and unassuming, and he's very kind, and he's very, he's very like gentle and all this stuff, but the story like just wants to destroy him. They want to like nuke him from space, just to, like as much as possible, which I don't love. And there's obviously like a myriad of other critiques around him.
He does have the best line in the whole series though, which is "You got me pregnant, faggot," which he says to his boyfriend after becoming gay, and then getting pregnant because, like, I don't even remember what the justification they give in the show was. Like, it's a weird thing where it's like, oh, your T must have been off this one time when you were perfectly pregnant.
Yeah, yeah. I I do think they continued the trend of just like incredible lines in that genre with this movie, because I really did like the line "I love tranny cock," uh, which I guess people of trans man, trans mask lived experience. Let us know if you've ever heard someone say that to you. I feel like that gets said more to trans women, maybe, but I could be totally off.
I will say that is accurate to about 2006 era, like trans culture
Uh-huh.
stuff, because that was like also around when you had like the sort of burgeoning start of trans man porn, and the big one that I forget what they changed their name to. I don't think it's Bonus Hole Boys. I think it's the one that came before that. But when they originally started, they were called Trannywood. T-Wood.
Ah.
And they shortened the name to T-Wood because people were like, it's kind of weird to name your production company that when it's all trans men.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't lay claim to the term in any direction. But it's a little bit dicey to base an entire brand around.
Yeah, it was a weird time. So I was like, that's accurate enough, which is kind of like one of my bigger problems with this film is that it's a little too accurate to that time period, and I don't really want to go back to it.
Yeah, yeah. So like that was something that I was kind of noticing more or less about it. Like I'm a little bit less, or rather, I'm just like very uneducated in like how shit was going back then as far as like queer liberation and like all of this stuff. But it was like very selectively like anachronistic of the mid-aughts in like very particular ways. Also, my roommate pointed this out. Like if you're gonna make like that type of like mid-aughts movie, you should probably license some songs.
Yeah, there was like a bunch of moments where we kept being like forgetting that it was supposed to be 2006 because it looks so much like a modern film, and there's not really a lot of like grounding in that time period outside of like specific scenes and set pieces. But yeah, there's no music from like 2006, which is really weird.
Yeah, it's annoying. Like I don't want to hear like the L word like royalty free soundtrack or whatever. That's like that sucks. That's lame. But I don't know, whatever. But yeah, there were a lot of styles and stuff like that, and a lot of like printouts, like posters and shit that were like really just like really modern styles. I think someone was wearing an Aya Bambi shirt, and like they didn't come out until like the tens, right?
Yeah, no, I definitely feel like if you go back and like look over that film, there's probably some like real bad anachronistic things, especially since like I assume looking back at 2006, here's the thing. I was like 16 in 2006, so it's not like I'm saying this like, yeah, it was exactly like that. But I do know that like that is also exactly what like 2012 queer culture was like. So I'm assuming part of the problem is also that like queer culture kind of didn't really like progress for 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I don't know. Once I strapped in for like what I was expecting, or like what I knew to expect, like as I got further into the movie, I like was getting some form of enjoyment out of like, I guess, the premise, um, and just how like, and there were some things where I was like, okay, this isn't like an accurate or scathing like portrayal or caricature of like queerness, but it is funny. Like there is something funny about it, and there were a lot of characters that I really liked.
I did like the joke about uh his sister Margaret Qualley being like, "Do you even know what trans camp is?" And him just immediately like knowing about Mitch Fest and like why trans camp is there, and then being like, you're gonna wear your Trans Women Belong Here shirt, right? And she's like, yeah. I thought that was funny because like the way she reacts is very much so the like, oh, you actually do know what that is, like kind of like experience of like thinking you're gonna call someone on like not knowing something and they like know like way more than you would expect.
Yeah, and then she has that great line where she's like, "Oh, you're appropriating my life," which is very funny.
She's
Um,
she's good in this movie. I wish that she was there was more of her being a shithead little chaser.
I yeah, I'm kind of with you there. Like I wish that like her drama could have taken more of a central stage, because like I don't know, as much as the central conflict is like a funny idea of like, oh, this boy's pretending that he's transgender, blah, 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 blah. Like I a lot of the main plot is subsumed by like gender 101 shit, where like I'm just like, okay, but I kind of want to know more about like the like sort of like queer community 301 shit that this movie is sort of like hinting at but not really pointing the camera at directly.
There's the line I really like, or not I like it, but it's like where he asks her like, oh, why are you into like masculine women? And she's like, oh, masculine women are like the hottest thing I could think of. And I was like, that feels like something where like a smarter or more interesting film would tie that into kind of the larger themes of like harm that you do to people when you're figuring stuff out.
Oh
And
yeah.
because she dated like a trans man and then like a trans woman immediately after, and there's that introduction of the idea of like, oh, people are saying you're a chaser, but it's kind of just like written off as like, oh, they're just saying that because you dated two trans people in a row. But it's like, okay, but like, what if you leaned into that and it's like she's into masculine women, so she ends up like fetishizing trans men and fetishizing trans women in like really shitty ways.
Yeah.
Because like the trans girl she's into is like soft butch, but she's not like butch in the way that like a lesbian in 2006 would mean by like masculine woman.
Right, yeah. Like she's it's all the movie's almost like trying to write her a little bit more didactically as this like she's this like trans woman top who's like, oh, and like Margaret Qualley like sees her as like masculine or butch or whatever. But then it's also like really funny that she is just kind of like immediately this like S&M top that's like super poly and like sleeping around and all of this shit, and it's just like over at Margaret Qualley's character's head.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, like a kind of, I guess like it would have been more interesting to get like some more development out of that character and out of that like dynamic, uh and to like because there was this sort of character arc for Margaret Qualley's character, but like yeah, like I said, I just kind of wanted to wring a little bit more out of it, I guess.
But yeah, like that also like ties into the whole thing where it's like with the girl whose name I'm forgetting, the love interest lesbian.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Like with her whole thing where it's like, you know, at the end she's like, oh, like this is kind of me realizing I'm bi, and like I was going along with this deception because I was trying to convince myself that if you were like a trans dude, that it's like less scary. It's like I don't really have to come out as bi to date a trans dude, and that's kind of fucked up. And like how that ties into like the pressure she has to be a good representation of lesbians because she's a famous lesbian essentially.
Right.
And you know, like again, that could have been more interesting. And I like that she's like, no, like what we did was like fucked up. But like that's it. Like, and she doesn't really have a character like beyond that.
Yeah.
Also, not for nothing. It's really weird for her to be in her like 21 or 22 and dating an 18-year-old and like starting to suspect that he's actually a cis dude, but not thus also being like, oh, he's probably like 18.
Yeah, like that I mean, I don't know. That's just such a huge suspension of disbelief thing for me.
Because like I've been in like the position of like meeting somebody or like hanging out with someone and thinking because of like other like contexts that they like are older than they actually are. But the thing is, right away I'm always like, wow, this person's like really immature and annoying. So it's what it's telling me that is that like either like she's into the fact that he's immature and annoying, or like she like doesn't put together that like maybe he's like kind of like a little young for me to be like dating him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when he's like completely inexperienced. Like that's like a key point in the film is that he's super inexperienced. So he's like especially gonna come off as like really immature and kind of annoying because of it. The filmmakers and Ariel Schrag by extension, I assume are operating under the assumption that like the way a cis man can pass as a trans man is that he's a younger guy passing as an older guy because trans men always look younger than they actually are. Which is insane, which is like insanely like not true.
Which is worth unpacking, perhaps.
Especially since I'm going to go ahead and say the actor playing the 18-year-old, probably older than 18, probably should tell you right there that cis men can just look like trans men.
Yeah. That there's really no, like, you know, really no metric for that kind of thing. So which, I mean, like, the movie kind of tries to make that point with the character of Ethan, who like comes out at like a late point in the movie as like a gotcha moment.
Yeah.
Which I do hate, like a person coming out as a gotcha moment. Not a fan. Like I don't know, it's hard for me to say whether that was like effective or whatever. I just thought it was lame.
Yeah, no, it's really lame. It's also funny because I had actually clocked that he was trans, and I assumed it was just a trans actor playing a cis character.
Right, which you know also technically like makes sense in the context of the production, because you know whatever,
yeah,
anything goes, right?
So like then like when that happened, I was like, oh, did they like put out a casting call for like passable trans guy? Because like that's because like that kind of feels like that makes this like weirder to think about on like a production level is like casting calls for trans men where like a part of it is like, no, we need the audience to think you're cis the whole time. to an extent that like I assumed that they cast somebody who had gotten keyhole top surgery, which means that you're now at a point where you're like casting a person based on like what surgeries they've gotten.
Yeah, like what access they have.
Because like there's that scene where like he takes his shirt off and it's like, okay, like that's he clearly doesn't have like the more obvious air quotes top scars.
Sure, yeah. It's just very difficult.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing, and it makes me really disappointed that the decision of how to air quote subvert the original was to just like make it safer.
Right.
Which feels like the wrong direction to go with something as, ironically enough, as fraught as this, where it's like, okay, but what if you actually made it like worse? but like you kind of lean into that and make it into like a larger conversation about like self-deception. Like
Yeah.
the ways like queer people like lie to themselves and thus end up lying to other people because they're lying to themselves, and how a cis dude could end up in the middle of that because he's lying to people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's there's like fertile ground for just kind of like a lot of thematic stuff. And the movie does a pretty decentish job of like going in on some of that stuff, but I it needs like way more, and it needs to do it in like, or I guess I would personally rather it did it in like a less sort of high schooly sort of L word way, yeah, I don't know.
It does have that L word problem where it's like it's more about like, look how fun this is. Remember how fun that was? Oh, being gay is so fun. But also like really intensely dramatic, but like it's fun drama.
Yeah.
Which is like great for the L word.
The odds weren't fun.
Great for the L word, not so great for this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Like don't get it twisted. We love the L word. It is but it is like trash soap opera for gays.
I love the garbage. I love to eat the garbage. I love to no, the L word is just fine. And to a certain extent I want to extend like a little bit of leeway to this movie, just because like this, for everything that I say about this movie, like this isn't, there are elements of it that are like out community, sort of like, or not like intra-community feelings, but like the aerial shagness of it is definitely like an outward sort of perspective. But the amount of involvement, of just like there's a certain amount of queer people on a set to where I'm just like, okay, you're in the community, and so these are a lot of the problems that this movie has are like inter-community sort of like weirdness, I guess, which is fine. It's like a completely separate issue from what we're usually dealing with on the show, which is a really welcome change. And also like I have to sort of appreciate not really the camp isn't like the right way to talk about it, but like the corniness, I do have to, like the cringe, I have to really stand behind.
Yeah, no, I think that's a reasonable position to take. I though return to my thing of like, my problem with the cringe is that it's like, oh, I lived through this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't have like a nostalgic value attached to it.
It sucks.
I think returning to it could be like a really interesting thing, but I didn't get the vibe that this was returning to it in a like evaluating it with like the perspective of people who are now like older and more experienced and not like fucked up young 20 something like queer and trans kids kind of figuring this stuff out on the fly. It's just like, God, it has the same like youth navel gazing stuff that I don't like in a lot of like straight and cis movies as well.
Right. Yeah. That's kind of the thing that sucks about it.
And to an extent, it's equality that we can have movies like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when it's something I lived through, I don't like it.
Completely fair. Completely and totally fair. And like, yeah, I don't think I stopped being closeted in some way until like after the aughts. So I had like, I mean, like not, I don't know. I was in like GSAs and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. It's complicated. The aughts wasn't very fun. It wasn't good. The things that I like glean from it are kind of at its expense, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that's fair. This is like kind of a weird nitpick. I did kind of like when they had the like marriage protesters, and they were like, we're against marriage because it's like assimilationist. And then like the trans girl character is like, actually, like it's mostly because we don't think this is like what the gay rights movement should be focusing on, when it should be focusing on these other issues. Weird thing I noticed, she didn't mention the war on terror. I was like, that feels like a weird one to leave out 3 years into the Iraq War.
Yeah, it feels kind of like that would be central to a lot of like organizing is, maybe that big old war that was going on. It was like a really just kind of one-sided conversation that like this roommate character and like the trans girl character have, where it's just like, well, we blah 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 don't think blah blah blah, and it's like real. Her reasoning is like really 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 hyper simplified, and
Yeah.
I just hate that shit in movies.
Yeah, no, same. It's really a like, look, we're showing both sides of this concern, but it's like you're not showing like either side of these concerns.
Yeah. You're acknowledging that
You were
there is a
acknowledging
concern.
that people disagreed on this, but you clearly have a specific opinion that you have on it.
Hmm.
How? All right, so since we already did the cash thing for Cuck, we didn't have to for this one. Which did you like better, Cuck or Adam?
I definitely liked Adam better. It just had more to it. It was, in a way, in its own way, funny and fun. There's things to glean from it, and there's like community dynamics and interpersonal dynamics that are like, at least you can kind of like go shopping for ideas for like really good source of like, if I were to do this better, I would blank, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I could see
same
that.
question back to same question back to you.
I actually would say Cuck, and that is just because Adam I found a lot more like boring. I had more to say about Adam. Like I will say that like of the two that I watched, I like went on Twitter the next morning and I was like, here's like all of my thoughts on Adam. So like it's more of a puzzle piece of a film in that way, but to me that made it like a lot more disappointing, where I kind of went into Cuck expecting it to be like dumb and stupid and like not really interested in investigating itself. And it was, but then it had some stuff that like made it more fun to like watch with like friends over Discord.
That's fair. Yeah, I can totally see that.
So I'm kind of looking at those like in like the values of that way, though I would say Adam is probably like technically a better film.
Sure. They both have their sort of hidden small values here and there.
The big thing that I felt like was a lost opportunity with Adam was I thought that the big subversion that the director was going to do was that Adam was actually like going to end up being a trans woman at the end of the film.
See, that would have been cool.
Like I felt like that would have been like very much the tying in the themes we're talking about, but also like very much so like, yeah, like that kind of makes sense that like a dude pretending to be a trans dude would have like some weird gender shit that they were actually working out.
Yeah, that's like more realistic too. Like there's a point at which you kind of have to, take stock and just be like, how come the only people I talk to are like trans and queer people? And it definitely would have been, I would have liked it the best if he kind of came to terms with his own transness or like gender identity or whatever in like a legitimate way.
Or
but
even
just like
like even like bisexuality. Like there's a
Sure,
Letterboxd
yeah.
review where somebody was like, the only chemistry in this film was between the trans dude roommate and Adam, and they don't even kiss at the end of the film. Bullshit.
Yeah. Like that would have been interesting too, like I perfectly welcome like cis people commingling with trans people in sort of a regular platonic way, but I like, yeah, I also would have been interested in that as an alternative.
I think it just would have made it a much more interesting film and like added. I think I also like it too because it sort of introduces a sort of moral question to it, because like Adam's behavior as it stands in the film is definitely like shitty. It's shitty behavior, and it would remain shitty behavior in that case. But then it introduces this sort of more question of like, but it's also in service of like the way he's working this stuff out. So like, is it good that he did that rather than like not deal with those feelings forever long? Like it adds an element to the film that I think like was missing from this sort of generic writing experience of like, what if I write a movie about a person who's doing a shitty thing, but I make them likable?
Right. Yeah. Would have been what we could have had.
But yeah, it
Yeah.
very, 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 very disappointed film. Do you have any other ideas?
Oh gosh. No.
We're gonna be we're partially doing this because, like, you know, quarantine, coronavirus, not a lot of movies coming out right now. But we do have another double feature coming up soon. But that one,
Yeah.
you know, kind of more on the I guess esoteric drama film circuit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we wanted to do an episode that is also for people who love to eat trash and want to watch and wanted to hear us talk about some trash.
Yeah, we're doing it in support of one of our local small theaters who's basically streaming. They like got, you know, their movies and now they're like streaming it online due to the quarantines. So yeah, basically, if you can, and if any of your local theaters are doing the same thing, try to support them because it would be cool right now.
Yeah, I know.
If possible.
A lot of them need it. You'll probably get a chance to see movies that you might not otherwise get to see. Same reason to always support independent film.
Yeah,
But,
absolutely.
You know, but you know, buy a ticket, an online ticket, get your roommates together, watch some
Check
weird
it out.
indie art film that your local theater decided you should watch in these trying times.
Yeah, so keep an eye out for that. We'll have that up.
And thank you again for supporting us and for listening.
Thank you so much. Join our Patreon if you have not or are not. We do exclusive series called Throws It Back, where we talk about movies from the past, not just movies from like this year or whatever. Next or like end of this month, I think we're doing one on we're doing a poll on Laura Dern and her filmography. So I don't know why I said that like that, but that's
It was
what you
cool.
get.
It was fine. And patrons also get to see processes 3 days in advance.
Yeah. So join. And thank you for joining us thus far.
Yeah. Once again from quarantine, sitting on my floor because that is where my microphone is.
Yeah. Once again from the great state of inside.
I'm Jay Bearhat.
I am Baru.
Bye.
Bye.